Okay, so we're back. Channel got renamed, other things happened. But still love me some Pathfinder. Let's talk about 3.21 and the Pathfinder changes. Because they changed a lot. And some of it's confusing. Some of it requires a lot of work to figure out whether or not it works. So we'll be going through that, including some software to simulate some of the new benefits that we're getting. So let's talk about what we got. I imagine that this pathing is slightly different. I believe they mentioned something along those lines. But we now have remove an ailment when you use a flask, or remove all elemental ailments when you use a flask, and 50% chance for flasks you use not to consume charges. This is interesting because the way that use when full interacts with chance not to consume charges is that the flask gets used, and then the next time the flask would gain charges, it checks again and gets used again because it's still full. And that can keep happening forever, right? If you're really, 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 really lucky, your flask will never run out. But, you have to win every single coin flip. So it's a little difficult. Magic flask applied to you have 30% increased effect. Master Distiller grants bonus to non-channeling skills used by consuming 3 charges from a flask of each of the following types if possible. Diamond Flask, 150% increased crit. Okay. Bismuth Flask, 20% elemental penetration. That's interesting. And then we have Amethyst Flask for 25% of physical damage as extra chaos damage. That first benefit of 100% and 50% increased crit it's neat. But 20% elemental penetration is interesting, right? So, for instance, one of the things we could do is, and there's a lot of question marks around how this is all going to interact. Does this mean that for 3 charges from a Bismuth Flask, I get 20% penetration on my Herald of Ice, my Herald of Thunder? If I do, that's kind of sexy. But there's still a bunch of duration skills as well. Like, if we're using Firestorm, we don't cast that very often, so sustaining those additional charges isn't bad. 150% increased crit and 20% penetration, that's like an additional link worth of damage, which is roughly what you hope to get from one of these nodes. Galvanic Field, another example. Right, we would be able to use the same kind of effect, Vortex, to a lesser degree, although that initial hit is pretty big. Getting 20 penetration is pretty good. So there's a lot of different skills that actually have quite a bit of potential if we're going down this route. Like, especially anything with a duration tag becomes interesting. So this node is a little niche, right? I think that a lot of people will find that for any skill you spam, that 3 charges from each of those flasks, that's 9 charges. Right? Getting 9 charges every 3 seconds is fine, but every second becomes very difficult. 10 times a second, it just doesn't work for attack-based builds. So that makes it very difficult to use this. This node looks like it is not very good. Gain 3 charges every 3 seconds. It's like what we had last league, except nerfed again. And probably still one of the best nodes on the tree. Until they changed Master Surgeon. And I think they're gonna regret this. So what I used to do back in the day is I would end up pathing all the way over to agnostic, although agnostic was like down in this area of the tree. And then I would grab mind over matter, combine that with agnostic, and I would use enduring mana flasks and sustain righteous fire. Worked pretty well actually. I did like a dot build, a cold dot righteous fire hybrid thingy around the days of the first delve. Right, you also can pick up these duration nodes here and here. It all kind of lined up to build something very reasonable. Now, life flasks recover far more life than mana flasks recover mana. And the other part is that the way that they did this doesn't cost us a prefix or a suffix. Right? Like, part of the issue with enduring mana flasks is you don't get any other prefix on your mana flask. This is any life flask. And there's some questions about how this is going to interact. For instance, like, does it interact with divination distillate? Right? Can we just pop this flask and keep it up? Can we just get a free 12% quant before we, of course, scale it with flask effect, and 30% rarity before we scale it with increased flask effect, and 50% increased elemental resistance, and 25% light radius? Because why not? Like really? That seems like it doesn't say life flask effect. Maybe it doesn't interact with hybrid flasks. But if it does, then this divination distillate would become a little strong. The other thing with life of flasks is that, we get prefixes on these things. Right? So you can get massive increases to your recovery. And there's a lot of more multipliers on here as well. Like your effective flash on you is a more multiplier. The recovery speed, it shrinks the time, but effectively it's a more multiplier as to how much life you get per second. The increased recovery is a more multiplier. Right? So there's a lot of things that all add together to get to ridiculous numbers. So increased recovery rate, probably not going to be a fantastic feeling because you would have to hit the buttons quite often. Instant recovery, we don't care about anymore. We have increased recovery rate again, probably not really worth it. So those mods are not that interesting. Increased amount recovered and reduced recovery rate. If you don't want to hit buttons very often, this might be very good. More recovery while used on low life. So if you're a low life build, you can get 130% more recovery. That gets really ridiculous really fast. It's a more multiplier. Just 60% increased recovery at the cost of, probably all your mana. But that doesn't matter. Increases are all added together. There's a bunch of increase you can get from the trees. This is not as interesting as more. More is always interesting. Probably don't care about maximum charges. Charges when hit by an enemy. You're forced to take the node before it anyway, so you're probably going to be full charge anyway. Reduced charge per use, useless. Increased amount recovered, increased charges per use. I mean, if you have 50% increased amount recovered, that's just an increase. We don't really care about that because that's additive with the rest of the tree. The more multiplier would be more interested. But 50% increased over here, or you can have more recovery while in low life. I mean, you're probably better off taking either this guy, which nukes your mana, or this if you can do low life. And to be fair, like, low life becomes very, very appealing when you can use these modifiers. The other part is that we don't just have a prefix, right? There's also suffixes. Would your minions like to recover 4,000 life a second? Does that make certain minions viable? I mean, I assume this interacts. Remove curse on use, probably not that interesting. Hinder nearby enemies, Grant immunity to hinder while hindered, Where's the other one that is weird? Oh, here we go. Recover an additional 40% of life's flask recovery amount over 10 seconds if used while not on full life. That's another possible 40% more multiplier. Right, so this could be really nice, actually. Right, so if you are using these flasks, the flask drops off. Right, you now no longer have that recovery. Well, this says you have 40% of that recovery still, even when the flask drops off. And then when you turn your flask back on, you still have that 40% as well. So this can really help bridge the flask piano issues, if it works. But the challenge that we run into is that we have, let's say that we have a flask. Then we have a 1.2 multiplier because we have a 20 quality. This, of course, can be higher. We probably have like an increased life. Let's call it 100%. So that's a ×2 multiplier. Then we have recovery speed of 30%. So that's a 1.3 multiplier. Then we have effective flask. You're probably looking at 20 to 40%. So let's call it 30%. So that's 1.3. Divide by 100. I went a little bit nuts there. So you have an X4 on this, the base flask that we're looking at right now. And then on top of it, we might be able to get another 40% from this guy. So that's another X 1.4. So 5.7%, 5.7 multiplier. The node itself reduces it by 50%. So times 0.5 is at 2.8. And then if we compare that to, just the flasks that you get available, and those are like a few thousand. Right, so it is 2,000 over 2 seconds. Let's be lazy. 2.4 over 3.5. So times 2400 divided by 3.5. You're recovering a lot of life very, very quickly. And this is with low investment, right? You could have another 10% quality. You could have higher effective flasks on you. You can have many, many, many more modifiers. It's weird. The other thing that's interesting to keep in mind is you could have multiple life flasks in effect this way. Right? So just because you decided to have a few thousand recovery, you might also have a few thousand recovery just for your minions. And you might also be able to have divination distilled on the side because, I mean, 20% quantity is considered pretty good. And that assumes a certain amount of investment in effective flasks on you. This could have been half as effective, and I think it would still be really good. I don't understand this note. But let's talk about Master Alchemist. Let's talk about this 50% chance for flasks not to consume charges and removing elemental ailments. Is this any good and can it hold a candle to this? No. But is it any good? So this gets a little bit trickier because for some people this might lead to some PTSD. Let's look at some code. Where's my zoom on this thing? It's been a while. There we go. Alright, so in this particular case, we are configuring things. We assume that we have 60% increased flask charges gained. We have a 50% chance not to consume charges. And let's say that we have a belt with a jade flask, a quicksilver flask, a stealth flask, stibnite flask, and a bismuth flask. This is pretty greedy, charge-hungry flasks. But if we all set them up with charges when hit set to 3, and we get hit 10 million times, we can actually like run some simulations and see like what is our actual recovery per second, assuming a 4% recovery whenever you use a flask, of a recovery per hit, not per second. So this would get us 3.14% of life recovered whenever we're hit on average. And we would be using a flask 78% of the time whenever we're hit. And that is with, you know, pretty greedy flasks. So let's say that on the other hand, we're going to say like, nah, we're not going to do this. We're going to just run a resist off of here. So we say we have a ruby flask. We have a sapphire. When we have the, it's not aquamarine, topaz. Right, we'll remove the bismuth flask together. Apparently I put an extra P in there. Under this setup, we would be looking at a higher likelihood that we're going to use flasks whenever we are being hit. Takes a little bit to run through 10 million simulations, but it's easier to do this than to actually, you know, do the math. Alright, where are you, buddy? Let's reduce this to 1 million simulations, because maybe doing this while recording videos is a little bit different. In this particular case, 3% chance of 3% of life on average recovered on hits, 7.6% chance to avoid ailments. Now the reason this is going down is we pulled one of our flasks off. We could, if we really care, just look at what like a single bismuth flask would do. And just a single bismuth flask with the ability to recover, 40% of the times it will get used. And this is with 3 charges recovered on hit and a relatively low investment in charges gained. The problem is that even when we increase this, right, we say we have a bismuth, ruby, sapphire, topaz, stibnite. I guess this could be something else. We, 40% of the times it will get used. And this is with 3 charges recovered on hit and a relatively low investment in charges gained. The problem is that even when we increase this, right, we say we have a bismuth, ruby, sapphire, topaz, stibnite. I guess this could be something else. We don't necessarily have perfect flasks. We again are looking at like 75% chance of getting the ailments pulled off of us whenever we're hit, and we get a 3% recovery. It's not bad, but the 75% number, it's really hard to make this go up very high. You can't really get it to 95% with any reasonable numbers. So, due to that, it's very tricky to make this node any good. It's not bad, right? 3%, 75%. If we, on the other hand, remove this node altogether, it was much faster last time, so I'm not sure why it's having an issue. We see it gives us about 50% increased recovery and 20-25% of chance to avoid ailments. But there's no way to get it to 100%. Right? And because it's not really avoid ailments, it's remove ailments when you're hit. So it could be good. But I think that they were very scared of this number, which is they should be. And they probably proactively nerfed it into the ground. So it's weird. Like, I don't exactly know what they were planning on this. So the problem is that if you don't have like 90-95% chance to avoid elemental ailments, you can get hit, you can get shocked, and now you're going to take another hit while you're shocked. Also, you got hit and you didn't recover any life, because if you were to recover life, then you wouldn't be shocked. So it kind of gravitates towards the worst case scenario, the way that these skills are lining up. Right? So you kind of have to build your character to be able to take multiple big hits in a row. And that's just a very heavy lift. So it's neat, but it's not worth an ascendancy point. That's going to be the problem with this. So I think that Master Alchemist is garbage. Right? Unless we can increase our chance for flasks you use not to consume charges, which we can't. They pulled that out. I don't think this node is going to work for us. It doesn't really provide us the recovery when combined with the new mastery, which gives you life whenever you use a flask. It doesn't give us enough ailment mitigation, because the way shock works and the way that this node works is that you are going to be taking a hit with the full shock effect on it. You have to survive both, or you die. So yeah, this is bad. But it's interesting to look at. Master Distiller is bad for almost all skills. It's bad for all attack skills, right? You just attack way too often to be able to afford that 3 charges. It is amazing for Herald skills. Right, like you just click the button, you spent your 3 charges, and now it's there forever. It's great for duration skills. Nature's Boon is fine, right? This is where you put your points if you don't have something more exciting. Nature's Adrenaline is what Nature's Boon used to be, and it's just a nerfed version of it. And it's still probably one of the best nodes we got. Master Surgeon is I mean, if they nerf it by half, it's probably the best node on the Pathfinder tree. So yeah. Nature Reprisal. Nature Reprisal is interesting. So 25% chance to inflict withers for 2 seconds on hits. That's amazing. Right? It allows you to get rid of that link. 50% increased effective withered. Pretty amazing too. This is like an additional link for chaos skills. But there's also a pair of unique gloves which make withered work for your elemental skills. So that could make Nature's Reprisal also interesting for elemental skills. Master Toxicist, still really good. I don't think that this pathing is the way it's going to be. But it feels like this side of the tree and this side of the tree we're not on the same page as far as to the power level of what a passive node should be. As far as what I'm personally gonna do, I mean I'm always prone to just take this pathing, and I'm thinking of going to the route duration skills, right? Skill effect duration here, skill effect duration here, all elemental damage, Ash, Frost, and Storm. We'll pick up elemental equilibrium because we'll be using like Firestorm. Firestorm is gonna hit. It's a little bigger. 1 impact every 0.15 seconds, and we're gonna cast it once every 3 seconds, or a few times every 3 seconds, but probably a manageable amount of casts. Then we'll have Galvanic Field. We'll probably end up with an additional lightning skill just to apply Galvanic Field. Focus that lightning skill on applying Galvanic Field, maximizing the shock effect. And then this should hit every 0.1 seconds. And then we'll probably have Vortex on left click. So that way we can also have Vortex going. And with this, combined with having Elemental Equilibrium for 25%, running the all elemental resist reduction as an aura, just so I can remove an additional cast from my list. I'll probably be able to trigger Elemental Overload very easily, so why not? And then we just ping people to death with small elemental hit. And if I can get the unique gloves, which allows my withered to increase elemental damage, then that would be awesome. I can run Righteous Fire because, I mean, we're gonna have enough life regen anyway. And I don't know what else I'm gonna be doing. The opportunities for weird things with Pathfinder are very high. Divination Distillate is... I mean, they may have changed it. I haven't read the patch notes super detailedly, but yeah. If we can keep this up, that would be absolutely bonkers. But just having... where are we? There we are. If it interacts with this 10% of recovered, right? If this is a 40% more multiplier, that's amazing. I don't know if Flask Effect increases it beyond 40%. It might. Life recovery speed might actually reduce this 10% as well and multiply it up again. Don't exactly know. It's quite possible. Or we can go live on minions. Right? It's like... If we can give thousands of regen to our minions, that opens up opportunities as well. Um, you know, one of the problems with minions is that you kind of have to invest a bit in defenses for them to work out well. Maybe that's no longer true. Maybe you can just have casual minions and then just rely on life flasks to give them a few thousand life regen, and that's enough to ignore most of the game mechanics. I don't know. So there's a lot of interactions to look for. I think that if they nerf Master Surgeon before launch, that might not be a bad idea. But I think people would be very, very, very upset with them. But yeah, this is mistakes were made. We'll see. Yeah, maybe it's not that interesting, but my gut tells me that this, combined with the way that you have both a prefix and a suffix, has the potential to be absolutely ridiculous. So we'll see how all that interacts. Heart of Oak got a big boost, right? It's much more likely that you want to actually be using your life flask. But again, 2% regen, who cares when you get a few thousand regen already? But yeah. Anyway, that's roughly what I'm looking at for league start. I hope that I can make this tri-elemental duration spell elemental equilibrium business work. I don't exactly know. I'm going to be looking at the new skill gems. I'm going to be looking forward to the Val Firestorm, which could be very interesting. But we'll see how all those things work together. But yeah, I think there's going to be some very interesting opportunities for strange and curious interactions for around Pathfinder. So I'm sure there will be more content coming out as the league starts.